Welcome to another edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the fantastic pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Schiffman. How are you today, Matt?
I'm good, Brian. How are you? I've got a question for you. Brian, what do the numbers 9, 21, and 18 have in common?
They're all divisible by 3, Matt.
That is true. They are also the odds of the last 3 Derby prep winners.
Wow. So, Matt, what you're telling me is a horse who's won 1 career race is, in fact, not unbeatable? Is that what you're telling me?
That's probably true. I got another question for you, too, Brian. I know.
The first question was, how are you? And I'm doing well, Matt.
Okay, so this is the third question for you. I know you're going to get this one. How about what do these horses have in common? Street Sense, Nyquist, Spend a Buck, and Ali Sheba.
Well, they all ran very well in the as 2, and they all became Kentucky Derby winners. Let's see, Ali Sheba. Yeah, Ali Sheba, Spend a Buck, Nyquist, Street Sense. Spend a Buck ran a very good Breeders' Cup but didn't win, but then he won the Kentucky Derby. Ali Sheba ran a very good Breeders' Cup, but then won the Kentucky Derby. Street Sense and Nyquist did win the Breeders' Cup and win the Kentucky Derby. They weren't all 2-year-old champions because Ali Sheba and Spend a Buck weren't.
You got the gist of it, Brian. That's the only 4. That's the only 4 top 3 finishers.
Okay. From
the Breeders' Cup Juvenile who have won the Kentucky Derby. I want to give credit to our friend, Tony Bada Bing, for enlightening me about that kind of really startling statistic.
Yes, Spend a Buck ran a very good Breeders' Cup behind Chief's Crown, and Ali Sheba came running late behind Capote. I remember them well. Hey, Matt, let's bring this show back to the present day, can we? Good Magic was the horse everybody was waiting to see in the Fountain Youth, and it was a little bit of a plop, plop, fizzle out for Good Magic. Really didn't have much at the top of the stretch. I guess you could say he finished the race off decently to be third and maybe gaining just a hair on strike power late, but certainly not the performance that most were looking for. I didn't have him number 1 on my list, but I know a lot of people did. What now for Good Magic?
That's a good question, Brian. On the more positive side, as a 2-year-old, it did take Good Magic a couple of starts to get to his best form and win the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. It's fair to say that he needed the race, but on the other side, like you said, he ran an okay race, and I don't think you can say much more than that. The Fountain of Youth was clearly another one of those kind of races that I don't love to watch, a merry-go-round race where it was those 3 in those positions all the way around the track.
Yeah, and if you handicap the race like we did, Matt, it didn't look like it would be that kind of race on paper. It looked like there'd be more pace. Now, Promises Fulfilled got away with pretty moderate fractions and a pretty clear lead. Strike Power decided to stalk, and there were a couple others in there that really didn't show speed. Machismo, for one, I thought should need to show speed, and he was well back off the pace. So it was kind of a different race than we expected early. Now, Promises Fulfilled was a very good 2-year-old. Wins at Churchill Downs and Keeneland for the son of Shackelford. And then a good third in his stakes debut to close out the year. There was talk that he had a minor injury in the race. So, the son of Shackelford. And I'll tell you what, Matt, he won the Fountain of Youth, a mile 16th race at Gulfstream from the 10 hole with speed. That's not easy to do. So he was rushed out from that 10 hole. There's not a huge run up to the first turn, but he took over the race before they hit the first turn. And I came away pretty darn impressed, despite the fractions being a little easier. I came away pretty darn impressed with the performance by the son of Shackelford And we've always said Dale Roman's horse pockets are deep right now with talented 3-year-olds, and maybe this is the best one he has.
Yeah, and that was just the last comment I wanted to make about the Fountain Youth, was that things hadn't been going real smoothly on the Derby Trail for Dale Romans, but maybe things are going to start falling his way with the win by Promises Fulfilled, and we'll see about his decision to scratch Free Drop Billy heading into the Gotham.
Well, one thing we know, it was a good decision because he scratched his favorite horse in the race, or the horse that was preferred of his entries in the race, and he won it with another. So that alone seems like a good decision. We're going to talk a little bit about this week's Gotham coming up, Matt. But yeah, Free Drop Billy, certainly Romans has a chance to win two strong preps in back-to-back weekends, so that's interesting. Strike Power. Now, Strike Power came into this race undefeated. I think they did a good job in rating him to a point. Maybe that helped the winner win the race, but probably something they needed to do to see if he's a real two-turn horse, and even possibly a Kentucky Derby horse. Nothing wrong with his performance, but he was never going to catch the winner. The winner seemed better to me, especially considering the outside post, and Strike Power really had his chance to go after him on the turn and early in the stretch.
Yeah, and trainer Mark Koenig said, kind of felt the same way, and they're going to give it another shot on the Derby Trail and see where they go from the Fountain of Youth, and I think that's a fair assessment.
Both of the top two, Matt, it looks like Promises Fulfilled, the winner, and Strike Power, the second place finisher, will be back at Gulfstream for the Florida Derby. I don't think either will be favored again, with Audible also pointing for that race, the Holy Bull winner from the barn of Todd Pletcher. But the Florida prep season is wild, and it continues to stay wild as we approach the Florida Derby, which is, of course, the biggest prep at Gulfstream Park. Now, let's get back to Good Magic a little bit, Matt. It wasn't a bad performance. Just never really made a run at the leaders, was a clear third. If he moves forward, certainly there's a chance that he still could be the best 3-year-old in the country. On the other hand, when you choose only to have 2 preps before the Kentucky Derby, I think you're even more under the gun to run well. And this has to be disappointing to Chad Brown and the followers of Good Magic.
Yeah, I guess so. And all along, Chad said that it would be one race at Gulfstream Park and then onto another surface. It looks like it's going to be the Bluegrass at Keeneland. Maybe that's a track that he's going to like better. But I agree, Brian, when you're giving these horses only 2 preps before the Derby, you've got no margin for error. I don't think it's enough racing really to have your young horse well prepared and educated and at top form.
Agreed, Matt. Agreed. Let's get back to the winner one more second, because this is interesting. I think Shackelford arguably was one of the more popular horses of the last 6-8 years, Matt. He was not a horse of the year. He was a really good horse. He had that big white blaze, kind of a pretty chestnut. He worked himself up during the races, and he was a nice 3-year-old, ran a good Kentucky Derby, but then he won that Preakness, and his popularity took off, and he didn't win every time, but he won some big races, really nice horse, and he was a horse that showed you his speed early, and then when he was really on, he kind of had another gear when they straightened out, and to my eyes, Promises Fulfilled, even the pretty big blaze he has and the way he ran this race, he certainly reminds me of his sire just a little bit, young sire Shackelford.
Yeah, and Shackelford is a sire that's the kind of stallion that's popular with, like you said, Brian, with that brilliant speed and winning some big races. I think he's attracted some good mares.
It'll be interesting to see. And of course, Promises Fulfilled, just like Shackelford, trained by Dale Romans. Dale Romans has been knocking on the door at the Kentucky Derby for years. He's going to try again this year, whether it's one horse or more, and maybe Promises Fulfilled, like I said, becomes his top Derby hope now. Speaking of top Derby hopes, Matt, it looks like the top two current contenders, the top two on most top 10 lists this week after Good Magic's loss in the Fountain of Youth, are in fact Bolt Doro, the horse I thought should have been the 2-year-old champion, and McKinzie, the Bob Baffert highly talked about horse since before his debut, winner of the Sham Stakes, adjudicated winner of the Los Alamitos Futurity. They're going to meet this weekend at Santa Anita. It makes for a very interesting edition of the San Felipe. There's other horses in there, Kanthaka, maybe the heroes from the Bob Lewis, but it really looks like this one should come down to the top two, the two favorites. I'm not looking for another 9, 18, or 21 to 1 shot, Matt. I'm looking for Bolt Doro and McKinzie to throw down in Saturday's San Felipe.
Again, Brian, it sure seems like that's what should be happening, but the way things have been going, the long shots every race, I guess you just can't throw everybody out all the time. But it's time for Bolt Doro, just like it was time for Good Magic. Every report is that Bolt Doro is training quite well. He's had a whole slew of workouts since he had his minor setback. So we'll see what we got. It is no easy spot, like you said, Brian, with McKinzie in there, who many people have at the top of their lists, and a pretty good field otherwise. It looks like Baffert may have 3 horses in there. McKinzie, it looks like a promising maiden winner in Restoring Hope is going to be there. And then most recently hearing that he may run either Axeman or Nero in the San Felipe also.
Yeah, we'll see about the other Bafferts. And I do. The third horse I'm most interested, honestly, in this race is Kanthaka, who ran that big race at 7 furlongs in the San Vicente. But again, I can't. This is not going to be a shocker, Matt. I'm gonna go on a record and say it's not going to be a shocker. 1 of 2 horses is going to win this race. It's going to be Bolt Doro or McKinzie. You're not going to get any odds on either. Frankly, McKinzie will be bet heavily, maybe in a very similar range to Bolt Doro, who I think will still be favored. I sound like a broken record here, Matt, but I'm convinced he was the best 2-year-old in the country last year. And, his front runner was so good. And then he had so much trouble in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile to be third. Coming back, McKinzie's had a few races since Bolt Doro last ran. So the advantage to conditioning and recency certainly goes to McKinzie. And McKinzie still might be that horse that people expected him to be, from the beginning. They always liked McKinzie. So should be really interesting. They both have pretty similar running styles. I think this is going to be a really good showdown. And I'll say this, anything other than a 1-2 finish in either order, I'm going to go with Bolt Doro coming off the break. But either order, I'd be a little bit surprised, because I think these two are for real, at least in this season. I don't know what this season means as the quality of the 3-year-olds yet, but I think these two are for real as far as the crop goes.
Yeah, and one comment is, Bolt Doro needs to get out of the gate alertly. McKinzie is not the kind of horse that he wants to be giving a significant advantage to at the beginning of the race. True.
And McKinzie Bolt Doro has had a propensity to breaking a step slow, and we saw that got him into trouble in the Breeders' Cup. So the San Felipe for me, Matt, is the big one. That's Saturday, but there's 2 other graded stakes Kentucky Derby preps on Saturday, and they both also have good interest. Let's go across the country first to the Northeast, the Gotham. I understand you guys are expecting quite a bit of snow this week. Hopefully it'll be all cleared out quickly, and the Gotham will be unaffected. Saturday's Gotham back to a mile, which kind of makes it an interesting race. I'm going to throw out some names of top contenders for the Gotham right now to be drawn tomorrow. Forenzi Fire, who we've always said is more of a miler than a 1.25 mile horse, so he gets the mile. Free Drop Billy, as you mentioned, scratched out of the Fountain of Youth to run in this, dropping back in distance a little bit, as is Forenzi Fire, and as is Enticed, who with Free Drop Billy was beaten by Audible in the Holy Bull. Enticed was actually the favorite in that race, Matt, if you remember, from the Kieran McLaughlin barn, the Kentucky Jockey Club winner who beat Promises Fulfilled in the Kentucky Jockey Club last fall, tries to improve on a pretty disappointing fourth in the Holy Bull. But in those three names, Forensic Fire, Free Drop Billy, and Enticed, and everybody else that'll be in the Gotham, you have a pretty interesting race.
Yeah, it is interesting with it being the mile distance and being the one-turn mile. I think there are trainers looking at it just like that it is a one-turn mile, which may fit their horses really well. I don't think that necessarily bodes well for those horses going 10 furlongs in the Kentucky Derby, but this is a big race. It's got a big purse, a big chunk of Derby points. Forensic Fire only probably needs a third place finish to get enough points to get into the Derby. Of course, Dale Romans brought J-Boy's Echo up to New York to take the Gotham last year, so I think he's got a pretty good handle on the kind of horse to win this race. Also, by the way, Brian, Kenthaka is also mentioned as a possible horse in this race. And
actually, Matt, it looks like Kenthaka is staying at home for the San Felipe. He'll be in the San Felipe. The Gotham, I've heard that Nero might actually make the trip out, which I think would be an interesting entry in the Gotham. But no Kenthaka. He's going 2 turns in the San Felipe.
Okay, and well, I kind of felt like the one-turn Gotham maybe would have been a better spot for Kenthaka, and obviously not as tough a field when you're talking about Boltoro in McKinzie in the San Felipe. So it's an interesting field. We'll see which horses actually go into the race.
Matt, the Gotham used to be much closer to the Kentucky Derby. The Gotham used to be an early April race and then a late March race. So it's an earlier mile than it used to be. And horses would run that one-turn mile, Secretariat being one, who had no problem going from a mile to a mile and a quarter. They had more foundation. They had more races than a lot of these horses we're seeing nowadays. But I don't mind this one-turn mile to see what they have. To see what kind of horses they are against other good horses, and then go from there. I know people think, well, maybe running this Gotham at a mile, 2 months out is not a good sign for the Kentucky Derby. But show me a good Gotham performance, and these horses can move forward. Having said that, I think Forensic Fire is best at a mile, and he might be the horse to beat in here. Probably not a top Kentucky Derby horse for me. Enticed needs to improve. I'm still not sure how good Enticed is. I certainly could see him step forward. But for me, this is Free Drop Billy's race to win. Maybe Dale Romans is getting on a little bit of a run, and maybe he's making all the right moves by scratching the right horse out of the Fountain of Youth. I think Free Drop Billy is the type of horse who can win at 1 turn and 2 turns. His Holy Bull, nothing wrong with his Holy Bull return race where he was second and just a little short down the stretch, and Audible ran very fast down the stretch, by the way. So for me, I'm looking at Free Drop Billy as the one to beat in here.
Yeah, there's one other horse that's interesting to me, named Beautiful Shot from Keith DeSormo, who is planning on sending the horse east. This horse ran really, really well as a 2-year-old, competed very well and beat some names that have been on the Derby trail and done well. Like he was second to Grey Vitos and beat Mourinho, competed well with Nero. These are all horses that have been on the Derby trail. Interesting horse. This is his first start of the year, though, so that may make it a tough spot. But I'm going to keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, and certainly DeSormo has done well in Derby preps over the years, and this year, in fact, with my boy Jack, not too long ago, winning down at Oaklawn Park. So yeah, you have to be aware. California shippers have done well in races like this, the Gotham in particular, over the years. So we're still waiting for the draw. There's a few horses, as you could tell by Matt and our conversation there, that are kind of flipping back and forth between staying home and going to the East Coast. So yeah, Beautiful Shot, perhaps Nero. It looks like Kenthaka is not going, but there probably will be some interesting lightly raced Californians in this race to spice things up in the Gotham. The Tampa Bay Derby, Matt, also could be a little spicy. We get a rematch of an interesting race in the Sam F. Davis, where Catholic Boy was second as the beaten favorite, but the horse that beat him, Flame Away, is a multiple stakes winner. And the horse that ran third is a horse that myself included, a lot of people like as a horse developing and becoming good. I'm talking about Vino Rosso, the son of Curlin. So it's good to see those two back. But the Tampa Bay Derby looks to be anything but a two-horse race.
Yeah, and you mentioned Vino Rosso, and I'll kind of refer back to the beginning of the show when we were talking about the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and the Kentucky Derby. Seems like Todd Pletcher is leaning more towards the Kentucky Derby and not pointing as many horses to the Juvenile anymore. And Vino Rosso was a classic example of that. Won his first two starts, ran an interesting third in the Sham, so he's going to be tough in there. Flame Away, the versatile runner for Mark Casse. But then you've got other horses in there. I know we've got one in there, Brian, that you've been high on in Untamed Domain for Graham Motion, primarily a turf runner, but talented and making a shot on the dirt in here. Certainly one to look for. There's World of Trouble for Jason Service, who had that amazing run in Pasco Bay at Tampa Bay, a stake there that he won by 13 lengths. And I think Dale Romans might be putting Tiz Mischief in there.
Right. Romans is spreading out his army of good 3-year-olds. Tiz Mischief, he was in that Holy Bull. We talked a little bit about them with Free Drop Billy and Enticed. Of course, Tiz Mischief was third as one of the favorites. So Tiz Mischief, it looks like probably will go to Tampa Bay. And if he improves a little bit off that Holy Bull, slightly disappointing Holy Bull performance, you got to give Tiz Mischief a shot. Flame Away's got speed. World of Trouble, ran a big sprint at Tampa Bay. So I don't think anybody wants to leave him alone, but maybe Flame Away and World of Trouble will hook up a little bit early. I'm more interested, especially as we're looking forward to the Derby, of the horses who are going to be coming from behind. Vino Rosso, I'm very interested in, and Untamed Domain. Untamed Domain is a turf horse. Untamed Domain, a son of Animal Kingdom. But I think there's always been good hope, and Graham Motion certainly thinks that he will handle the dirt. A lot of class on turf. He's had one prep, which was a decent return on the grass. He should be cranked up now. And for his dirt debut, the Tampa Bay Derby, no easy spot, but Untamed Domain, very interesting horse. He's actually my top pick in here, Matt. I'm not sure how much he's going to get that. I have a feeling Pletcher, by the way, might be the favorite with Vino Rosso coming off that interesting third, as you put it, in the Sam F. Davis. So nice field. A lot of possible winners. The 5 we mentioned, again, World of Trouble, Flame Away, Vino Rosso, Untamed Domain, Tiz Mischief. Hard to separate them if you're looking at them in this race. So nobody should be too low, and I wouldn't throw out any of the 5. But the 2 horses in here that interested me most are also horses that I think could be 1.25 mile horses. And again, that's Untamed Domain, son of Animal Kingdom, and Vino Rosso, son of Curlin.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Brian. I'm pretty sure that Vino Rosso is going to be the favorite, and you probably get a decent price on Graham Motion, and he is always dangerous. We got 3 big Derby preps, 50 points to the winner, 20 points to the second place finisher. We're going to have 3, 4, 5 horses maybe out of this who end up with enough points to secure a spot in the Derby gate.
Exactly. So we got a showdown out in California. We got horses doing the 1-turn mile thing in New York, and we got a bunch of horses in Tampa Bay. It looks slightly evenly matched, but horses that want to prove themselves as true top Kentucky Derby contenders. And the Tampa Bay Derby's over the last dozen years or so has been a pretty good proving ground for horses going on either to the Derby or last year, of course, we saw a Belmont winner come out of the Tampa Bay Derby in Taprit. Hey, Matt, all this Kentucky Derby talk. Let's talk about the Kentucky Oaks just a little bit, because I think last weekend was a good weekend for the fillies. Horses on my Kentucky Oaks top 12 list did very well. My top horse on the list is Midnight Bisou. She won out in California. Another Midnight Disguise for a trainer, Linda Rice, won the Busher, and she's doing the winter thing at Aqueduct, but she's got a strong leg kick. And then Fly So High was the winner for her third straight win, a milestone win for great trainer Shug McGahee in the Devona Dale, but then she didn't leave the track on her own power. So let's talk a little bit about those three, Matt. I'll let you roll with whoever you want to start with first.
Yeah, just following up a little bit on Fly So Free. I think the report now is good, that it's just a small injury to a suspensory, not a bad suspensory injury, but she's not going to be ready for the Kentucky Oaks, but she will probably be ready to race later on in the summer. And as you said, that was win number 2,000 in the career of the classy Shug McGahee.
Classy Shug McGahee, yeah. Fly So High has won 3 in a row. She's a daughter of Malibu Moon. The injury was not serious at all. Jose Ortiz felt something a little off after the race, hopped off. She got in the ambulance, but it looks like she'll just miss a very short amount of time. And yeah, like we've seen so many good fillies over the recent years come back as strong horses in the summer. So we look forward to the return of Fly So High. The other two, Midnight Disguise, has not beaten anybody, honestly, the New York bred, but with her closing kick, I think she's a horse to watch out for, especially if the Oaks has one of those strong paces and big rallies like it did last year with Abel Tasman. But Midnight Bisou continues to be the number one filly on my list. She got a wet fast track, very little speed, a small field, and I thought she did everything well. She continues to remind me of Blind Luck, Matt. She's not a big filly like Blind Luck was also not a big filly, but the way she just strides out to the wire, I really like Midnight Bisou. Unfortunately, Dream Tree was scratched, so it was less competition. But Midnight Bisou, the Santa Isabel winner, continues to be my top Oaks pick at this time.
Yep. Dream Tree, of course, unbeaten in 4 starts. Baffert scratched her out when the track came up sloppy. She's going to have to get on the track soon.
That's right. Well, hopefully we'll see Midnight Bisou and Dream Tree in a bit of a female showdown in the Santa Anita Oaks next time. And speaking of great females, Matt, we got to mention Winks. What did she do? She did it again. The Chippy Norton Stakes, the Group 1 Chippy Norton Stakes down at Royal Randwick. Matt, it was her 23rd consecutive victory for the unbelievable daughter of Street Karai. She just rolled by this field and won for absolute fun. It was her 16th Group 1 victory. Gaudy statistics by any measure, Matthew.
I tell you what, off that layoff, Brian, I thought Wink's performance was one of her most visually impressive races. Usually there's some drama. You're like, okay, come on, girl, come on. And she'll get up by a half length or a length. But like in this race, there was no question. She was moving a little earlier than usual and was just so full of run and blew away this field. And it was a Group 1 race too. So Brian, was a very, very wow debut to 2018. Scary
if Winks is getting even better.
Yeah.
The good news is she might only have one more race in Australia. Their springtime down there. Their fall down there. She might only have one more race, the upcoming George Ryder Stakes, before she heads international. So who knows where Winks will go. People were already asking me if she's going to go to America someday. And her trainer last year, Chris Waller, did tell me that is a possibility. Certainly anything's open, but I think Royal Ascot will be the first venture, and we'll see how she does there. But can't wait to see Winks, because she is for real, Matt. I have no doubt in my mind that she can win anywhere. I can't wait to see Winks on an international stage, and Royal Ascot would be a great place to do it. And one more turf tidbit for you, Matt. I love the way Sadler's Joy became a horse who I really didn't like at one point in his career. I thought he was a bit of a plotter, but I really grew to like him last year. Just a consistent late runner with that huge kick. And we saw vintage. I'm going to say vintage already because he's done it enough for me to say vintage. We saw vintage Sadler's Joy in his return race, the McDermott, on Saturday at Gulfstream Park. Matt, he was last, a big field for a big part of the race, and he was seventh in the middle of the stretch, and he got up and won that McDermott at Going Away.
Yeah, I love that kind of race, and he ended his 2017 season with a couple of fourth place finishes. So there were some questions coming into this year, and he answered them with an exclamation point.
One of the best turf horses in the country, Sadler's Joy, trained by the good guy Tom Albertrani. All right, folks, we are going to be back with another Horse Center. That's right, another Horse Center right here next week. As always, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for watching each week. We've had more viewers lately. I think as we're amping up to the Kentucky Derby, it only makes sense. Continue to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget our sponsor is Derby Wars, the best contest site out there. Can I get a parting shot from you, Matt?
Yeah, it's a great weekend with the three preps we talked about, and I want to thank everybody for watching the show heading to the first Saturday in May. And as always, I want to thank our producer, Brett Workman.
Kentucky Derby talk here on Horse Center, and a little bit of Oaks talk too. Don't forget the fillies, everyone. We'll see you right here next week on Horse Center.